So now that we've built all of the tools that we need to be able to have attack areas and damage areas in our game, now we need to build a proper attack state for our player. Now you can see here that even though it's rudimentary, I've got attack animations that can combo, I can attack while jumping, crouching, and the like. And my attacks, of course, hurt the damage area over here. By the end of this video, you'll be able to build the same attack state for your game. Hi, my name is Michael. Join me as we build an epic Metroidvania game in Godot 4 using GD script. This is the Metroidvania Forge. All right, as noted in the intro, we're going to be building this attack state today, and a couple things that we're going to do as we build this. One is that I want it to feel a lot like the Hollow Knight movement and attack, which is very fluid, and you can kind of attack as you're moving, jumping. One thing I noticed about Hollow Knight is they seem to use the same attack animation sequence even if you're running or standing still, which is nice. That's something we're going to mimic here. You could, of course, replace it with your own as you get to more advanced kind of states with your game. But certainly for starting out, we don't want to overcomplicate some of that stuff because it really will just bog you down trying to figure out how to make something complicated, where it's better to build the simple, elegant solution first oftentimes and then go from there. So we'll add the attack state. We're going to have to keep in mind some things like being able to activate our attack area, which you can see flashing in red here. Also the directionality, being able to make our animations flip as we change direction and move. We'll have basic combos built in as well. That's going to be one of the requirements for my attack system. So you can see he swings, you know, two different directions, and it can just be strung. As if I spam the button, he'll just keep attacking back and forth between those two. All right. And on top of that, I've got my movement and my attacking kind of working harmoniously together so that I can move while I'm attacking, jump and attack, crouch and attack, and all of that needs to feel seamless to the user as they're playing the game. So we'll get all of that working. And of course, that means that we're going to be updating other states to add the transitions from that state to the attack state and so on. And if it wasn't obvious, we'll be adding audio to our attacks. I'll review the homework briefly at the beginning here to show you how I implemented this little hit dust effect, just leveraging things that we've built in our previous systems. So we'll cover a good amount of ground today, make sure that this topic makes sense, and really get us set up. Obviously, we can't have enemies if we can't attack them, right? This is going to be a critical piece of our Metroidvania. First thing I want to do today is follow up on one of the homework assignments I gave, which was adding a dust effect to the attack. And so if I run my little demo here, what I'm talking about is when I hit this cube or this damage area, I want to add a dust particle. Now, I'm curious what solutions you guys had, and if you're in Discord, you can always drop them in. I'm going to show you the quick and easy solution I'm going to implement. It's not perfect by any means, but for this game, I think it's going to be more than good enough. So I'm going to hop over to my attack area script. Okay, this is where I'm going to be instantiating or rather spawning, or that's neither of those are right, initializing one of those dust effects. What I'm going to do is here in my on body entered, what we're doing is we're checking if the body is a damage area, and if it is, then we tell it to take damage. Now, what I want to do here is I want to just add a couple lines of code to detect and calculate a position to spawn one of the dust effects, and then we'll actually spawn it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say we have a position, which is a vector 2, and that's going to be equal to my global position. Okay, but then I'm going to change this a little bit. So what this is going to give me is, if I'm looking at my scene, this is going to give me, you can't see the red thing, right? But it's going to give me the global position of that attack area, X and Y coordinates. And then what I'm going to be doing is I'm interested in the up and down of that attack area because I want my hit dust to be aligned with kind of the middle of that. But the X coordinate for that is going to be on the player, right? So let's go ahead and demonstrate this really quick. So let me just spawn one of those dusts at this position. So we'll just use our visual effects thing, and then we'll do a, hit dust. And then the position, we'll just pass in this position, okay? Okay, so you can see how that is spawning right at the center of this attack area. We don't want that, okay? But as far as up and down is concerned, that's good. It's on the center of that. I think that's appropriate. So the next thing that I'm going to do is just adjust that x coordinate. So we're going to say pos.x equals, we have another position we can work with here, and that's the body, right? The other node that we've collided with. So if we get the body's global position .x and just use that to replace this. Oops, I need to do that before we call the visual effect, don't I? Okay, right there. Okay, so we're creating our position, and then we're just going to change the x value. So it's still going to be positioned up and down like it was, but now across, it's going to be the center of this. If I run one more time, boom, that works pretty good. Okay. Now, this is not centered on this cube. It's actually a little bit misleading. Let me just pull up that scene real quick. You can see that this damage area's position is like right here. So let me, just to reinforce how this is working real quick, let me reset the transform on this cube so that it's centered on my damage area. Let me just move this back down here, and we'll test one more time. And you'll see that that dust is going to be centered on that cube, okay? And there we go. Now, obviously, this solution isn't great for really large objects, so you may need to calculate something different in those situations. But for most of the things we're going to be building in this little game, I think it's perfect. And that's how I chose to implement the hit dust on this. If you have ideas and suggestions, you can drop them in the comments. Otherwise, let's move on to the rest of the tutorial. All right, so as we build the attack state for our player, there's a few things that we need to do, obviously, to get set up. The first thing we need to do is bring in some of the assets that we need. So I'm looking at my player scene. Let's go ahead and show this in our file system real quick. So we should have some sprites in here, right? We've got a hero and our input icons. We need to bring in the weapon, smear, or attack type sprite. So I'm going to go ahead and just open this in my file manager. And then I'm also going to open the zip file containing the assets for this chapter. All right, I've got this open. So in the sprites folder, you will find the weapon smears. I'm just going to copy that right in here to my player sprites folder. Okay. And we're going to use that to kind of add to this attack. And so actually one of the first things we'll do is set up the animations that we'll use for this. In order to do this, we need to add a new sprite to this, because obviously with this weapon smears, it's a separate sprite sheet from our player. And so let's go ahead and I'm going to add as a child of our player sprite, another sprite 2D. And I like to keep one sprite as a parent and the other ones as a child when I build a character, just because it keeps them all together, but you don't have to. I'm going to go ahead and rename it, and I'm going to just call it attack sprite 2D. I'm going to access this by unique name because it might make our code a little bit easier later on. Okay, now this attack sprite 2D, we're going to load this new weapon smear texture into it. Okay, so you can see we've got this. Now you're going to notice that this weapon smear texture doesn't necessarily line up exactly with the player attacks, because the attack frames on our player are very limited. And you'll see that as we animate, there's just a handful of small frames, okay? And we've also got maybe 2 attack animations and 2 weapon smears. And it's kind of hard to see here. They're essentially... they're somewhat symmetrically flipped on this vertical axis, but you've got a slash that starts from the bottom and goes up. And then you've got the second one, which starts at the top and goes down. Okay. So these are designed to be like a alternating slash kind of animation, but let's go ahead and just configure this sprite and finish it up real quick. So it's what, 8 frames or something like that. So just set this horizontal frame count to 8. Now we do need to reposition this slightly. And in order to help us do this, let's go ahead and set our player to maybe his attack frame. That frame is going to be, let's see. So I've got my player sprite 2D. I'm going to just set the frame here. In fact, you know what? Let's go ahead and do this with the animation player. Let's go ahead and create a new animation. That way we're not going to accidentally mess anything up. So I'm just going to select one like idle, duplicate it. We'll call it attack. Okay, so this attack animation, we'll configure it. It's going to be a very short duration. 0.3 seconds is how I'm going to build mine. Okay. And let's set this frame now. I don't know if I said the number. It's frame 31. Okay. So you can see now the player slashes out his sword. And actually, let's go ahead and just maybe configure the remainder of the base part of this attack, which is the player sprite. So I'm going to set my timing here to 0.05 seconds. Okay. Let me zoom in a lot. I'm going to keep the duration of this longer, even though some of these frames are going to be close together. So right here, I'll just insert a keyframe and set this one to be frame 32. And I'm doing this the old school way, manually. Okay, so we've got a little attack animation. But obviously, you know, without this slashing sprite, and I'm going to go ahead and hide my attack area as well. Without those, this animation's pretty lame. Let's put it on loop so we can see that. It's kind of a lame animation. This was intentional for two reasons. One is because I didn't want to spend hours and hours crafting a beautiful animation just to, you know, give it away for free and not even know if it works for what people need. But two, because actually many games do this. You have a very simple, quick animation. If you've ever played a game where you've got these really beautiful animations, but they feel really sluggish and disconnected from the player, sometimes it's because the animator worried too much about a beautiful animation and not enough about the feel and the action. So this animation, the second reason why this is so short, is it's designed to emphasize the feel of an attack. Okay, so what we've got though is we've got these 3 frames here, and we're going to be adding frames so that we can time this attack swoosh. I'm going to go ahead and stop playing this for a second though. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this. Let's go to the first frame. And with this attack sprite on its first frame, we can kind of drag this out and just get a feel for maybe where we want this to be. All right. And really, I think I want this part of the sword swoosh to kind of overlap with the blade. Maybe something like this. I'm not 100% sure, but something like that feels pretty good to me. And it doesn't have to be an exact science unless you want it to be. Okay. So let me just look at this position of this for you. So if you want to mimic it, you can. And in fact, I'm going to bump that over so that it's 24, 24. Now it's an exact science. Okay. So there you go. If you want to just position this at 24X and 24Y, that's how I've got mine. Okay. Now, obviously we need that sword swoosh to animate. So what we'll do is we'll just add a new keyframe right here. So I'm going to select my attack sprite and just key the frame. All right. And then we'll just update it, I guess. So I'm going to just select it. Let's do it the handy dandy fancy way. So frame, boom, 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 boom. Okay. You see how that kind of follows the sword a little bit and then it just trails off. So what's interesting is we have like an additional frame of animation just by virtue of the slash. Even though the player sprite himself is staying static for these 2 frames at 0.1 and 0.15, the slash adds that extra sense of dimensionality. Now, there's a couple other things we need to do with this slash, though. I mean, that we could go with this and it's all right, okay? But there's a couple things that I don't like and a couple things I want to change. One thing that I don't like is that I don't like this slash being on top of him here, okay? I want it to go behind the player, but it needs to be in front of the player on the first frame, and depending on your character sprite, maybe on the second frame, okay? But certainly on frames 2 and 3, or whatever, 3 and 4 here, we want this to be behind. And the other thing we want to do is let's go ahead and build in the visibility of our swoosh into our animation. It'll just make it easier to handle. So what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and just select our attack sprite. And I'm going to go to visibility and just key the visibility as on. And I'm going to take the show behind parent. I'm going to key it off. And then right up here on 0.1, when the slash needs to go behind him or the swoosh, I'm going to toggle show behind parent on and keyframe it. And this is one thing that I just love about Godot. You can keyframe almost everything in the inspector, right? So now we've got an animation where the sword swoosh goes behind him. And not only that, but if we weren't showing the attack sprite before we played the attack animation, now it will get enabled. Now, the other thing we need to do is, I mentioned we're going to have 2 animations. So let's go ahead and take this attack animation and duplicate it. And I'll just call it, yeah, sure, attack_2. All right. Now this animation is essentially the same. We're just slashing a different direction. Now, if you want to take this concept of having multiple animations and extend upon it, you can. I should note at this point in the video, it'll be obvious later that we're only going to have 1 attack state, because even though we have 2 animations, everything else about these 2 attacks is identical. And so I've kept them as a single state that can just recall itself. However, if you have attacks that are going to be unique or distinct in some way, like maybe the attack area or drastically different timing, you may want to have multiple attack states, but that should be pretty straightforward on how to handle it when we look at that code. Okay, so that'll be up to you, but let's go ahead and just set up this second animation. So it's going to begin for the player sprite on frame 34, which looks basically the same. And then we've got, let's see, 35 and 36. Okay, so now he's swiping his sword towards the player, towards the viewer. Okay, and so we just need to take these frames for the swoosh and do the same thing. So we ended on frame 3, so we'll start this one on frame 4 and just go through 5, 6, 7. Now, some of you are noticing that we might have the opposite issue going on here. You can see this is showing in front of the player, but it should be behind. So let's toggle that to be behind. And then once the swoosh gets here, it's kind of behind his foot and it should be in front. Okay, so I just basically swapped these show behind parent options there. And there we go. Okay, 2 attack animations. Now, one thing that I need to fix, these both have animation looping turned on, and I don't want ping pong either. I just want to toggle it till it's off. Let's go to our regular attack. Boink, boink, turn that off. Okay, so now they'll just play one time. That's very important for animation player signals, because if they're looping, they will never emit the finished signal or animation finished. I think it's called animation finished, and we're going to be probably wanting to leverage that. All right, we've got an attack state, and in the previous video, we added an attack area. So we pretty much have everything we need to make this happen. We'll probably come back and do a little bit more work with the sprites and whatnot, but we've got the building blocks in place. So let's now move on to our actual state. I'm going to go ahead and add a empty node here to this states tree, and I'm going to rename it and call it attack. And I want to access it by unique name, so we'll turn that on. And of course, we're going to need an attack state script. So let's create that. And just to make it quick and easy, I'm going to click on my idle script, right click and say show in file system. So now if I, in this states folder, if I create a new script and call it attack, then we're ready to get started. Let's go ahead and open attack. And I'm going to reference idle real quick. I'm going to kind of copy everything. Let's just copy it all. I want the animation player gone. Come back to my attack script, and real quick before we save this, let's change that to player state attack, like that. Okay, it extends player state, and there we go. We can go ahead and just turn on, I don't think this is how we'll do it in the long run, but let's just make it so that it plays the attack animation when it enters this state. And then maybe what we'll do is let's just kind of clear some of this stuff out. I'm going to keep this return jump line just so we have a template. I'm going to comment it out, and I'm going to go ahead and delete those in the process and delete this in the process as well. And then we'll fill these out as we work on the state. Okay. Now that we have a proper attack state though, we can go ahead and attach it here. And unfortunately, it's not getting the icon just yet because we just created it. So if you want to get that like I do, then I'm going to go ahead and restart my project. So we'll be right back in just a second. Project reload. Okay, we're back. Now, what are we going to do here? We need to, actually, before we move forward with this new attack state, now that it's working how we want, we do need to go into our player state script, because as you recall, the way that I've architected this player state machine is this base state has a reference to all of the different states that we can switch to. It just makes our code a little bit easier. So I want to get that reference. It's important that we have it accessible by unique name and whatnot so that it kind of matches the convention of the others. But there we go. Now other states can access the attack state. And let's talk about some of the basic settings and properties this state requires. Now, I want to have an audio that we can use to play back, okay? Some sort of file for that. One way we can handle this is I could just come to my audio folder. No, I'm in the global, hold on. General, audio. There is an attack audio. So I'm just going to drag this in, and it might make sense to call this audio underscore attack. Otherwise, it's kind of confusing what this variable is later on. Okay, there's an audio sound that we can play. And then I want to export a few things, a few variables that will help us. So in general, because I mentioned this attack is going to have the ability to essentially combo it and play back two animations, we'll implement a very rudimentary style combo timing window. We want some sort of a speed as well, because I'm also going to be making it so that this attack, we can move while we're attacking, right? So we want a speed there. So let's get those two things. So we're going to have a combo time window is what we can call it. So this is a float. Oh, not capital F. Don't do that. And I'm going to set it to equal to 0.2. So it's quite small. Some people may want it larger. Some of you may want it smaller. So I'm going to export the other variable. Let's see. That was our speed, right? And I'm going to set this to 150. And then we do need a couple other private variables. So we want like a timer, which is just going to be a float. Maybe set it equal to 0. And lastly, to tie in with the combo system, let's just say combo integer equals 0. Okay. The last item that I think I want to bring in here is I want a reference to this attack sprite. Okay, so that way we can access this swoosh. One thing you'll notice is we did add into our animation player the ability to make this visible, but we have no way to hide it. And frankly, I would rather almost not do any visibility in the animation player, because I don't want to have to keyframe the visibility of the attack sprite on every other animation. To me, that's just stupid amount of work. So by bringing this reference to that sprite into this state, we can help control it here. And with that, we have all of the basic properties that we need to make this state work. Now we're going to use this init function, but I'm going to come back to it later. For now, though, let's just add one thing, and let's just add this attack sprite 2d.visible equals false. Okay, so we'll just hide the attack sprite whenever we start the game, essentially, because that way it doesn't matter if we happen to be showing it right now. When we run the project, it will hide it for us. Okay, so there we go. We can't see it, right? So just a nice, simple little thing there. Now let's talk about the enter function for this state. We're going to be doing some things in here that I want to make easily repeatable. Oops, I'm on exit. Okay, so for example, playing this animation, because we're going to allow it to combo, and we might also have to play attack underscore 2 at times, I'm going to remove this from the enter function, and I'm going to create a new function that we call do attack, which I think is kind of a dumb name, but I couldn't think of anything better. Okay, so that function doesn't yet exist, but I'm going to take this for now. I'm going to take that out, and let's go create the do attack function. Pause, baby. Okay, there we go. And then what this means is that whatever we add to this functionality, not only are we going to call it here in our enter function, but then later when we want to trigger a second attack, if we're currently in this state already, then it will allow us to just basically do the same things without having to change states. Okay. And then one last thing I want to do in the enter function is I mentioned the animation finished signal. So we're going to connect to that so that we know when an attack animation has finished, right? So let's grab our player dot animation player. I think we have that. Yeah, we already got that set up. And then we'll just connect to the animation finished signal. Okay. On animation finished. So we need to create that function as well. Now, because this is the on animation or the animation finished signal we're connecting to here, we're going to have an animation name. So I'll just call that anim underscore name, which is a string. And if we don't provide this argument, we're going to get an error. But I'm giving it an underscore because I'm going to obscure it. We aren't going to be using that animation name anywhere. Okay, we're just going to be doing other code in here. Okay. So far, we've set this up to do very little, but we can play back in animation. I think what would be good at this point is to start hooking it up so that we can actually enter the attack state. That'll make it easier for us to test our code as we write it. Okay, for now, let's go back to our idle script and let's just make it so that we can enter the attack state from here. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add this check before we do the jump. So I'll say if underscore event dot is action pressed attack. Okay. Check for our attack press. Then I want to return the attack state. Okay. There we go. That's all we got to do for that. It should get us into the attack state from an idle when we press attack. So let's go ahead and test it. Because if we look at our attack state, we do have this do attack, right? Whoops, didn't mean to zoom. And that should play our animation. So, I'm not seeing anything happen. Let's look at, okay, let's make sure we don't have, okay, I've got almost everything commented out here. So we should be entering a state, but we're not. I want to check my project settings. We have our input bound correctly, right? Attack. Oh, I don't have a keyboard. Oh, I do. Yeah, right there, X. Okay, so I should be able to press X to attack. What else should I check? We can look at our player. We've got this label to display our state. Let's enable that and just see if it's working. Okay, yeah. Oh, you know what's happening? I think. Let's go into our player because obviously my attack button is enabling that area. So in my player script, if we go to unhandled input, well, I don't think we're necessarily consuming it here, but let's go ahead and delete this. So that was that debug code we added when I built the attack and damage script. I don't know if that's going to make a difference, but we needed to remove that anyways. There we go. Now it works. And I'm stuck. I can change direction, but I'm stuck. Okay. We can enter the state. Good. Well, let's make it now so that we can exit the state. We'll go back to our attack state script. And what we're going to do is on animation finished, we're going to, let's see, where is it? On animation finished, we're going to check. I'm actually going to write this as a separate function. We could write it in as this function, and I think I'm doing a little bit more work than we really need to, but this is for the sake of extensibility. So I want to make a function called like end attack or something like that. And the reason we're splitting this out is because I just have this feeling that down the road, me or you may want to take this a little bit further, and then we're not going to want it built into that on animation finished signal. Okay, so end attack. What is end attack going to do? The reason, again, I'm splitting this out too because we want to maybe potentially do a combo. Okay, so what we'll do is in our end attack, for now, let's just set next state equal to idle. And then what this means is eventually our physics process will pick up the next state. And actually, you know what? I'm going to make this null. That's fine. We can either handle it in physics or regular process. I'm going to put it on the regular process. And just as a quick refresher, in our player states, by default, we return next state. And that's just a property on every state. And so what happens is if we set next state to anything other than null, then it'll just return that on its next round. Okay. Now, if we use this option, then one thing we have to make sure we do is in our exit function, we need to set next state back to null. Otherwise, it's going to never let us attack again. Okay, so I know this is kind of weird and roundabout. We could simply just return, we could just have it do something else, right? But this is also working around a weird little issue where because we're wanting to end on a signal from an animation, it's not naturally hooked into any of our other processes that return a state, right? Okay, so we're just using that next state to kind of circumvent that disconnect. So it's going to say, okay, the animation finished. Let's end the attack. Okay, let's just set the next state to idle, and then we'll let the state machine take care of itself. So we should be able to attack and have it go back to idle. There we go. Okay. I'm noticing at least one error down here, and obviously we've got some leftovers from that attack swipe. Signal animation finish is already connected to. Okay, easy to fix. So let's clean these two little things up. These would have been next natural steps anyways. So obviously, because we've connected to an to a signal up here, we can't connect again. We could either make this something that happens on init, so it only fires once, or we can disconnect. And I prefer to disconnect because I don't really want this signal happening while we're in other states. I only want it to do this signal handling while the attack state is active. So we'll connect, and then on exit, we will disconnect. And while we're looking at the exit, let's go ahead and reset all of the other things that we need to. So one thing that we do is we want to set our attack sprite, that attack swoosh, to false, the visibility. And then there's two other things that we have configured in here, timer and combo. Let's just reset those because we're going to need to. Timer is 0, combo equals 0. Okay, so now if we play this one more time, we should be able to attack. The swipe goes away, and there we go. Now we do have some issues that we still need to work out, and I think this is the one that we'll handle next. So when we're facing to the right, everything looks good. When we face left, our swoosh is facing the wrong direction. Okay, so how are we going to handle that sprite flip issue with the attack swoosh? Well, there's several ways we probably could handle it. And we need to do two things. We need to flip it, but in addition, if we look at this, right, this attack sprite is offset on the x-axis by 24 pixels. And so we really need to be able to offset it the other way when we flip it as well, right? We need to do two things with it. I'm kind of torn on this because I've done it two different ways as I prepped, and I'm second guessing the way I did it, but we're going to do it in two different places. And this is the reason I don't like it. And I feel like we could consolidate it into one. So let's start with the one place, and if it works good enough, then it's good. But if bugs creep in, then we can make it a little bit more robust. So going back to our script here, looking at our attack state, I want to connect to a signal here. And actually, I want to review our player script as well, really quick. Okay, so our player script has update direction. Okay, and this is what we use to do several things, right? I mean, we're flipping our attack area here, and we're flipping our sprite. So you know what? I said we're going to implement one of the two solutions, and we were going to do it in the attack state, and I've changed my mind, and I hope it works. We're going to do it in the player state, because essentially what we're going to do is we're going to handle the direction flipping in one location and hope that we catch all of the edge cases. But if we get too many bits of code that are specific to the attack only, we might want to move it back to the attack state. Okay, but until then, this is what we will do. So when we flip our sprite here, what we need to do is we also need to flip our attack sprite. Oh, and I need to get a reference to that. Let's go up here, sprite, 2D, attack sprite 2D. Okay, there we go. And I'll just call it attack sprite. They're all 2D. Okay, so let's go back down to, where's that? Update direction. Okay, so here we'll just say attack sprite dot flip h equals, oh, I did that wrong, didn't I? Underscore h equals true. And then down here, we can set it to false. This one bit of code should at least get the sprite flipping handled. So let's test that real quick. Okay, yeah. It's facing the correct direction when we face left. Its offset is incorrect, though. Okay. So what we also need to do is we just need to take our attack sprite and set the X coordinate appropriately. So if it's facing, if it's this option, this means it's facing left, right? We could like add a comment just to make that easier, if that helps. So what we need to do here is we need to set our X equal to -24. Oh, and this isn't the attack sprite.x. This is attack sprite.position.x. That would have caused bugs. Maybe it did, and by the magic of editing, I removed them, and you would never know. Okay, so what we're doing is we're setting the position to -24 or +24 based on the direction we're facing. Okay, there we go. So now when I attack facing right, or left, the swoosh is facing appropriately. And you'll notice that even if I change mid-attack, it's updating those, which is kind of nice, right? Because our update direction code is decoupled from the states, and so it's able to change mid-attack, which I think is good. I think that's good. You don't get locked in because I'm building a quick, high action style game. Okay, but there we go. Now we are able to flip our sprites appropriately. Next step, here we come. Okay, so we've got our basic attack, and honestly, it feels kind of crappy, but that's okay. It feels crappy because I can't attack while I'm running. I can't move while I'm attacking, which you may or may not want, and I'm going to show you how to handle that either way. I can't attack while I'm jumping, and I've built this attack. I can't attack while I'm crouching. I've built this attack so that we can utilize it from just about any state, and I've intentionally kept it simple so that we don't have separate animations for jumping, crouched, etc. Now you can add those, and it's going to be fairly trivial. It's more of an art asset and just kind of busy work kind of a thing, right? Once you know how to make one, you can make all the others. But keeping it as a single state, no matter what we're doing, actually simplifies it a lot. So one thing I want to do is let's hook up the attack state from every other state. So right now we can attack while we're idling with this little line of code. I'm going to copy that, and you can see I put it before jump, which means the attack button will take precedence over the jump button, though the situation where you hit both at exact timing is probably extremely rare. But let's go ahead and go into our run state and add it in here as well. And I want to keep that order consistent. Attack before jump. Even in the jump state, handle input. Attack before jump, bro. Oh, I don't have an underscore on this one. Okay. Let's see. Fall state. Same old thing. Same old thing. Now, this is where maybe the design of my state machine might feel inefficient to some. And I'm open to polite, constructive criticism on that. I don't know that there's a super better way. I don't want to do it any other way right now because I do like the ability to control which states can transition to attack and which ones can't. And this is just a simple way to handle that. So let's see. Crouch is our last one. There we go. So pretty much all of our current states allow us to attack. So let's test this out now. So now as I'm running, I can attack. And you'll notice that I keep moving. It's a little bit imperfect because I'm letting go of the direction buttons here and I'm still moving while I attack. We'll fix that. Jump, attack. And so I've made a fairly generic attack animation so that it works. Crouch to attack. There we go. Okay, so we've got all of our attacks in here. It needs some refinement, but feeling pretty good, feeling a lot better. Okay, I think a good obvious next step will be to handle our basic combo, but some of you at this point in the video are following along and are noticing some issues with the feel, the game feel of our attack. Don't worry, we're going to refine that in this video as well, but before we get there, I want to implement the combo piece. So how the combo piece is going to work is if we go back, I'm going to close crouch. I'm going to close most of these scripts for right now. We're going to revisit maybe one or two of them, but just too many scripts open. My head is starting to fall off of the neck. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll come in here and go to our handle input on our attack, okay? So right now, we've commented out this ability to jump, and I think that's okay. We probably don't jump while we're attacking. I don't know, but maybe you want to. But we do want the ability to do a combo, right? So just like we've added this attack action press detection to our other states, we're gonna put it in here as well. It's gonna function differently though, right? We're not gonna return the attack state. So instead what we will do is we're gonna take our timer. We've got this timer that we set up. This is where the timer and the combo time window come into play. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our timer and we're gonna set it equal to the combo time window. There we go. We've set that. It was 0. Now it's going to be 0.2 unless you've adjusted that timer window. And now we can work with this timer. Okay. So we'll handle the timer in our process function. This is a great place to do these little timery things. So what we can do in here is just say timer minus equals delta. Now we could do a check in here and underscore delta. or you could remove the underscore. Either way, probably best practice to do that. We could make it so that we only do this if the timer is greater than 0. Because we're in this state for limited time, there's not really any performance reason to not just let it get negative, okay? We're subtracting the timer, but we're not handling the timer anywhere yet. And this is where our end attack function comes into play. So what we want to do is here, we'll check our timer. We're going to say if timer is greater than 0, okay? So if the timer is greater than 0, then that means that the attack button was pressed within that combo window value that we set, right? So if it's set to 0.2 and it's getting subtracted, we have 0.2 seconds to press the attack before the attack ends, and it will think, oh, okay, we want to repeat this. So let's go ahead. I'm going to add an else here, and I'll put the next state idle. So if this condition is true, then we'll do one thing. Otherwise, we'll go to the idle state. And we're just going to do two things in here. We're going to say combo, right? We've got that combo value. And I'm going to say equals, and then we're going to use the wrap integer function. And this code will be good if you want to add even more basic combos to your attack. At some point though, once the combo value, like if you want to have like 2 or 3 regular combo attacks and then the fourth one is a different attack, then you probably want to add a check in here. And if the combo is equal to 4, then you want to return a different state. Otherwise, do what we're going to do here. So I'm just going to say wrap I, and we're going to say combo plus 1. And then the values we want in here are 0 and 2. So how wrap I works, we've used this before, but we're just taking a value, which in this case is whatever the current combo is, plus 1. And we're saying it has to be greater than or equal to 0 and less than 2. So this is inclusive and this is exclusive, meaning if it hits 2, it goes back down to 0. Okay. So really we're only going to allow 0 and 1 right now. But like I said, you could increase this. And then once we've set the combo, then we'll just say do attack. Okay. And lastly, we need to update our do attack. Okay. And there's actually a few things we've left off in our do attack, because right now we've been hooking up the state in a primarily visual manner. Okay. So this is important. Right now, we are obviously playing the same attack animation. So we need to maybe change this. So we could do something like variable, let's call it anim name is a string and it equals attack. Okay. And then what you can do, you can modify this. Again, if your combos are going to be greater than 2, then you can modify this further. But I'm just going to simply say if combo is greater than 0, then I'm going to set the anim name to attack underscore 2. Okay. Now you could just, like if you've got 3, then you could say, okay, if it's greater than 0, then anim name equals attack underscore, and then just like add the combo as a string or something, right? There's different ways you could handle this, but now I'm just alternating. So then we'll replace this bit of code with the anim name. Okay, so we've just determined which attack animation to play. If it's a comboing, it should alternate between the two. And then there's 2 other things that we need to do, and we'll come back. We need to activate our attack area as well as play our audio. Okay, I'm going to save this, but let's just test this and see if we can get our 2 animations to play. Okay, there you go. I'm spamming the attack button right now, but you can see he's playing both directions of the animation. And obviously I can't move while I'm attacking, and it feels a little awkward to get locked into space while I'm spamming this and be able to change. And now that I'm moving, I can't stop moving. Okay. But there we go. That's how I'm doing this basic combo. Okay. We'll go back and let's activate our attack area. This is really quite simple. We don't have, did we get a reference to it? I think we did in our player, right? Let's see, we'll go down to do attack. We'll just say player dot attack area dot activate. Okay. Now, really important note, the default duration is 0.1. If the duration is larger than the duration of your animation or longer, then you might run into some bugs pretty quickly. Okay. And there's a couple ways to work around that. I'm not going to get into it today, but I think you can see why, right? But for right now, this is only activated for 0.1 seconds, and then there's 0.2 seconds of animation before it can attack again. We should be just fine. I'm going to go ahead and just do the play audio at the same time, because really we just need to go to our audio system and say play spatial audio or sound. And then we want to play this, was it audio attack, at our player's global position. Okay. So now we should have a little bit of game juice added, and we should see our attack area is enabling. Very nice. I'm going to extend my attack area so that it reaches to the edge of this. Our player's got a pretty generous arm and attack length, it looks like. So let me just get this animation to a good frame on attack right at the beginning, or no, right here's good. Okay, so I want to take my attack area collision shape and just bloop, 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 make it a little bit bigger, just like that. Okay, we've come a long ways in this video. We just need to make this feel better now, right? And you may want to reset the damage on your attack. I still have it at 10 from the last video. That's a strong attack, man. Of course, it depends. Maybe your bad guys have 5,000 health. All right. We've made it so that we can attack from our various states. We've made it so that our attack is directional. Our attack area is working. We've really built most of it, right? Obviously, we need to address some game feel issues, and so the remainder of this episode is going to be focused on that. So let's go back to our attack state script, and let's start with a simple one, the movement of the player during our attack, okay? We can actually, we defined a move speed up here, because what's happening right now is our player's getting stuck in whatever speed he had at the time he entered the attack, right? So if I'm running and I attack, and then I just keep comboing, I'm not holding it down the movement button anymore, and he just keeps moving. Or if I've stopped and I'm attacking, I can't walk. I want to change that. I want it to feel more like Hollow Knight, where you can just attack while you're moving, and the movement and the attack feel very seamless. Okay, so I'm going to go down to my physics process, and we're going to integrate this movement speed in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to say player.velocity.x, and this will equal our direction, which is on our player as well, player.direction.x. And we'll just multiply this by, and then we have a speed here. Okay. Now, a couple quick comments. We've got a move speed on our player. So alternatively, you could come in here and just multiply this by the player's move speed if you want it to be the same. But the reason why you might want it this way is, let's go to our attack. So right now our player's move speed is 150 and our attack speed is also 150. I'm going to set this to something smaller, half of that, so it's a little bit obvious, 75. So what this means is I'll have a separate move speed while attacking, right? But you can see that now I can move and stop moving while I'm attacking, and it makes it feel better. I think I'm going to keep it matching. Now, if you decide that it's matching and you're never going to want to change it, then you might want to just want to use the player's move speed instead of a separate speed on your state, okay? But that's how we can handle that movement, just with one little line of code there by updating our velocity. Now, the other thing that I really think feels off, and by the way, this is with the move speed kept up, might be a little bit fast moving, but it feels okay to me. But the jump, if I jump and attack and let go of both, I've got some weird things. Like I no longer have my variable height jump. Okay, which this is going to be an issue with other potential crossing states that we have. So I want to fix that. I want to make our jump feel the same regardless of if we start attacking or not. And that's all going to happen separate and outside of our attack state here. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to take some of the gravity management code that we've currently have residing within our jump and our idle, or our jump and our fall states. And we need to abstract that and just maybe pull it into our player script. Okay. So how do we do that? Let's take a look at our different states here. So in our jump state, what happens when we release the jump button? You can see we're setting our velocity to half, and then we return the fall state. So this isn't happening if we attack, right? So there's one flaw that we've introduced by adding that, because when we attack, I mean, actually, to be honest, when we attack, we might still have the jump button held down. We still might want our variable jump height to work, right? Or maybe we don't, but we just don't know. When we've left the state, we've now lost this. So the first thing we need to do is take this little bit of code out, and then we need to go over to our player script. And here, I'm already in my unhandled input. Here in our unhandled input, we need to kind of recreate that, right? So if event.is action released, and it's the jump action, right? Then we can set our player velocity. We don't need to do player.velocity. We just need to call velocity. Okay. Right. So if it's released, then we set our velocity to half. That's going to improve it already, just that little bit alone. Okay. Because I no longer can do that weird floaty jump when I attack. You know, I'm attacking and I can let go of the jump button and he still does that behavior. So that's good. That feels a lot better. Okay, so there we go. We've got our attack state, and it now feels pretty good. So the homework assignment I'd like to extend to all of you watching at this point is to take this and work on building something that you can destroy. It could be as simple as just when you hit it, it disappears, right? But maybe you want to spawn particles or some other things and come up with a good solution there. And in the next episode, we'll be tackling that head on. We'll be making our breakable objects. We'll integrate particles into those, make them so that they get destroyed when the player hits them, and, you know, all that fun stuff. All right. So otherwise, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Go ahead and give me a like, drop a comment below if you have any comments or questions. And as always, I'll see you next time. And otherwise, if it's facing right, we can set it to 24. And actually, I don't think we're going to have any issues with this. This should account for everything. Oops. What do I got going on here? Make sure it's focused. Okay. So, what on earth? Stop. Save. Do I have another bug that I'm oblivious to? I think it's just not liking the int looking value. Maybe that's what it was. Okay, let's try this one more time. Okay, didn't crash. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. When did that become X? You guys, I'm about ready to lose my brain here. I don't know what's going on.